Good morning. This is John from the Springs Mennonite Church. And I'm here today at the end of this week. A week I've been sharing some various scriptures with one more. I got another week of this idea, and then I'll come up with another one for us. But today I want to close out this week with a passage from Philippians chapter 3 and beginning with verse 7. Here's what Paul writes. I once thought these things were valuable. Now, what is he talking about here? He's talking about following the rules of Jewish law, making sure that whatever you do, you don't violate one of the rules, of which there were 630 some. That's a lot of rules. I'm not even sure I could memorize that many, much less never break one. And we don't know that Paul did that either, but he did think that following the rules was all he needed to do. And he says, I once thought these things were valuable. But now I consider them worthless because of what Christ has done. Yes, everything else is worthless when compared with the infinite value of knowing Jesus Christ as my Lord. For his sake, I have discarded everything else, counted it all as garbage, so that I could gain Christ and become one with him. I no longer count on my own righteousness through obeying the law. Rather, I became righteous through the faith in Jesus. For God's way of making us right with himself depends on faith. I want to know Jesus and experience the mighty power that raised him from the dead. I was talking with a group of ministers not too terribly long ago, and I made the comment that I believe that man is not inherently good. I believe that man is inherently sinful. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't believe people are good or that everybody doesn't have some good in them. But if I am inherently good, then all I have to do is figure out how to build up the good, maximize the good, and minimize the bad, and then I'm okay. I've done what I needed to do. And a lot of people today think that. They think that if I can just maximize the good thoughts, as I've heard people say, the positive energy, the little light of knowledge that's within me, if I can just maximize that and minimize the stuff that doesn't fit there, then by golly, I'm good to go in God's eyes. And perhaps you think that. And you certainly have a right to think it. I mean, everybody has a right to think whatever they want to think. But just because I think it doesn't mean that it's correct. And so Paul tells us here, I used to think that thought, but no more. He said, I realize that everything is worthless except knowing Jesus. I've never quite understood, and I guess I never will, how people can feel like if I just give a part of my life to the Lord, that's all I need to do. I want to keep these parts over here because I like those parts. And they may be contradictory to this walking with Jesus stuff. Paul makes it clear here. The only thing that's valuable is your relationship with the Lord. Now, I know I'm speaking to some folks who probably don't believe that, certainly don't walk that, but that's okay. You can change. I can change. It says here that knowing Jesus is everything, and everything else, Paul says, I count as garbage. Well, I don't know if I'd go quite that far. There are a lot of things in my life that aren't perfect, but I don't want to think of them as garbage. I'd rather think of them as areas I'm still working on. See, coming to the knowledge of Jesus doesn't change everything you do and say. It changes everything about you, and then you have to work through those other stuff. Habits are hard to break. And if you're old like me, you've had a lot of years for a lot of habits. And sometimes we fall back on those, even when they are destructive. Maybe you've done that. Maybe you have fallen back in a time of great need on some pattern of behavior that really isn't helpful. And if you have, that's okay. You're human, just like all the rest of us. But what's important here is to see that finding the faith of the Lord in our lives is the thing that matters. Paul puts it this way. For God's way of making us right with himself depends on faith. I want to know Jesus and to experience, here's the key part, experience the mighty power that raised him from the dead. I want, like Paul, to experience the mighty power of God in my life. And I want others to hear me say that so they might want the same thing. And I'm saying it here today so that you, this listening audience, might want to know the same thing, the mighty power of God in our lives, not just in our lives on a Sunday morning when we go to church, but in our lives throughout every minute of every day. You know, there are a lot of things that people do that they think are going to last. Some of them last pretty long, like erecting a building to your name. Some of them don't even make it through the stages of thinking about it. But Paul says one thing lasts. It is durable. And that is the knowledge of God and his redemptive love towards you and me living in our lives. Yep, that's the truth. That's the real truth. That's the whole truth. And I hope you know that in your heart. I hope that you're living this even as I speak. Will you think about that? You make up your own mind. I appreciate you listening to me. I appreciate you giving me the time to come to you and share an idea. I hope it's helpful. If you have any questions or any concerns or needs, call us. We'll do whatever we can as fast as we can to help meet your need. You take care of yourself this weekend now. Have some fun. Enjoy life. And spend a few moments with God. Take care. I'll see you on Monday.